Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. Friday morning here in the old Pueblo, and I got a chance today to speak to a cat from a region of the state of Arizona that has been proving salvation for me in my career and trajectory, if nothing else, just for inspiration to see younger cats who were reared in a musical community and have devoted themselves to either producing, playing, or engineering great music. And I got a chance today to speak to somebody who's doing it at a pretty prolific level out in Los Angeles. Braydon Stark, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, brother. No, I'm so glad to be here. It's an honor.
Yeah, it is an honor. You know, I got in interviewing Canyon last week, he talked about, going to Mexico with families and just playing music on the beach the whole time. You know, he grew up in one of these sort of communal musical communities, and he actually really thought that that's the way he didn't realize that most people don't operate like that, where music came first.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And what was your sort of musical upbringing? Did you grow up in I'm not going to say you grew up in a commune, but was it a musically incentivized situation?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. Like, my love for music started when my dad brought home, like, just a regular-ass Casio keyboard, And then my mom, when she was younger, did a little bit of music stuff and a little bit of dance, and they neither of them do it anymore. They don't know neither of them are doing music of any sort nowadays. But my mom was like, she signed us up for piano lessons. She was like, "You guys gotta learn piano." And so at first it was like a homework assignment. I wasn't stoked about it. I hated it. Just because I thought it was lame. I didn't know that, like, music was... I didn't know people appreciated music until, like, 6th grade. At 6th grade, I learned how to play the Parts of the Caribbean theme song on piano. And I whipped it out for some of my classmates, and the people loved it. And I was like, no shit. I had no idea up until that moment that music was, like, cool. I mean, especially piano. I don't know why. Like, guitar seemed, in my mind, I was like, yeah, guitar's sick. But I sucked at it. But piano I was good at. And that's when I realized that piano was actually pretty cool. And that really motivated me to get into it. But yeah, so, like, me, my sister, my brother, like, all of us have played keys, in some regard. And then I was hoping to go professional with piano playing, but a good friend of mine, who Eternal Wheelers, he's
everywhere, dude. The man is ubiquitous, dude.
No, I've known that man since 6th grade.
We're gonna get into that. That's
with all my heart.
Yeah. Wait, so go ahead. Yeah, and then
so he was pretty much like, "Are you sure you want to do?" Because I was gonna go to school for piano performance, and he was like, "Look, bro, I don't know if you should do that." And I was like, "Why not?" And he was just like, "Look, like, if you're gonna be a piano player, like, you can play it without going to school for it, and, like, also, like, it's not lucrative to, like, go to school and pay someone to, like, learn how to play piano and all that jazz. And then on top of that, being a piano player in and of itself is probably one of the hardest careers to get into, especially piano of all instruments. You only got one per orchestra, and they're usually fucking insane. So, I don't know. Instead of that, I ended up going into engineering, But as far as my upbringing goes, like,
Wait, you're telling me in 6th grade, Eternal Wheelers was like... Oh, no, this was later in high school.
No, yeah. So 6th grade is when I met
Eternal Wheelers.
And then it was my junior year where I was, like, going to go to school. Because that was that time where it was like, got to go to college, time to pick my place I'm going to go. And I was like, I don't know. I just, like, all I knew is I loved music and I wanted to do it professionally. But I also wanted to make money off of it at the same time. I wasn't, like, I did understand the fact, at least for me, that I was looking for a career that was able to, like, be lucrative, and not in, like, a crazy way. So
no, I mean, you were able to sing for your supper doing something in music full time.
Yeah, exactly. And so
you look back on that advice, do you feel like that kind of put you on a path, I don't want to say efficient path, but without that, would you have kind of maybe been drifting away? Maybe you would have road dogged it, or you would have been in a band playing piano?
I have no idea to this day. I don't know. I feel like truly, no matter what I would have done, I would have enjoyed it and found a way to make it work, But that being said is, I don't know, ultimately the advice, struck a chord, and I still believe it to this day, where it's like I'm glad like that I didn't, go into something that would have taken hours and hours of free work, And I mean, don't get me wrong, and I think in any music passion you're trying to pursue, whether it's singing, songwriting, engineering, playing, you're gonna have to put in hours and hours of free, or just because you love it, and that's the other thing too, is it's like piano for me, like I loved it, but at the end of the day, I just didn't have the fortitude or even like the love to practice like to the extent that you would have to.
I dig. Can you just, as best you can, as you got into high school, what was the vibe of the music community? I mean, Bush League, all those cats are just. I mean, there's like an elevation in Flag. You guys are just.
It's crazy.
You guys are just higher.
Yeah.
You're higher elevated. I mean, just even the way these cats talk, they're not. I mean, I'm a New Yorker, Long Island cat.
Oh, sick.
Get pretty fired up, but like these guys. It's mellow, but it's a mellow burn. And I just wanted you to talk about how you would describe before you went to the trade school in Phoenix, how would you describe that musical community? Because it's way different than Phoenix, and it's definitely different than Tucson as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder sometimes if it was just our 4 years of
procreation, all the kids that were born during a
in those 4 years, I wonder if it was that.
What 4 years was that?
Just like our high school era. So like when I started high school was.
Were you born 83, 84?
Yeah, I wish. No, not really. I was born in 02.
Okay. Oh, geez, I love this kid. All right, so that would be like what, 2015, 2016, something like that.
So yeah, 2016 was 8th grade. That was the election. 2017 was the first year that we went to freshman.
How would you describe that 4-year pocket of cats?
I don't know. It was just interesting. It was like when I got in there, the seniors were like. It was just people that, like, in my mind, were, like, down to take music to a level that was, like, fun and beyond the scope of, like, institutional learning. Wow. You know what I mean?
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, I guess just, like, when I was a freshman in high school, it was, like, it wasn't hard at all for us to form our first band that I was actually in Eternal Wheelist with. It was me, Eternal Wheelist, our brother Sam Herring, Micah, Noah Chesterman, and
this wasn't Harmonic Radiance or
it was called that was Righteous Harmony.
Righteous Harmony, that was the Canyon, yeah.
Yeah, we were the Marshmallow Mateys, the Mellow Mateys.
Eternal Wheelist. So you were pushing. You just used a very very eloquent way of saying that outside it was above the institutional learning.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying that we're the first people on planet Earth to start a high school.
Of course not. No, but it's your interview. So I mean, in what sense were you? Was it just sort of were you reacting to sound? Were there actual song forms, or what was something that because listen, the institution, the academy, the ivory tower, whatever you want to say, and I'm glad that people get paychecks for that. A lot of professors were incredible live musicians, and they deserve. A good steady paycheck, but it's very stifling too. I mean, everything is codified. There's a curriculum for everything, and you can get sort of washed into a conformist bag.
Yeah.
But you guys were not into that. What was this Marshmallow bag about?
It was just a jazz group. It was like a jazz group. Wow. We played like some more soul tunes too, And that was the thing, because like there was I will say like our school, like at least like the school I went to was Flagstaff High School. The music program there was pretty legit. It was cool. It inspired me to tell these kids what I do. But there was never like a legitimate jazz thing. Like never. Up until maybe my junior year of high school, they offered like.
It's kind of a blessing, actually.
Yeah, and there just was never a jazz thing. And like jazz for me was like. I don't know, the first genre where I actually, like, that's when I was like, okay, I love this shit. Like, I love jazz. Like, it was just, like, so fun to play. And, like, being able to, like, I don't know, like, being good at jazz, like, it's hard to, like, separate from sheet music. Up until that point, it was, like, however good you were at reading sheet music was how good you were as a musician. And jazz was the first time for me that I realized, like, there's actually, like, some spirit to it, like a way to like, just like, and if you've ever played, and I know you have, and I know everyone has.
Well, I'm not a player, but no, I mean, talk a little bit about the idea of just, if there was a discernible moment or something that pops into your head about, the time when you were like, wow, I'm just going to, put the music away and just let my own inner soul and life force take over this song when we leave the head of the tune. I'm not saying you were McCoy Tyner, but what I'm saying is it's like this cyclical vibe, and then it's just how much vocabulary do you have, and then how much are you out of your thinking mind in order to get to the spirit mind, so that you can basically. Was there moments that you were out of the bandstand and people would say, "How did you do that?" And you said, "I have no idea."
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know. I guess, like, a lot of that stuff I've kind of, like, it's all kind of convoluted into, like, a few, memories and then just, like, a whole thing all together. And, I just remember, like, kicking it down in Sam's basement and, we would just, like, all bring our instruments and we would just jam. And that's when I first got my view into Logic Pro, because Sam was kind of, like, doing some production stuff. He ended up getting Ryan into it, and that's when that was my first glimpse into, like, I didn't know that shit existed up until that moment, and he would just, like, jam on the keys on his, like, Mac, hooked up to, like, a PA, and then we'd all just, like, sit around and just, groove,
wow.
to a chord progression, and that's when I was like, okay, cool, like, I don't know, it was just that moment for me that I fell in love with music. Everyone has that moment, I feel like, especially if you're trying to pursue it professionally, everyone has a moment where you're, like, you start falling in love with, like, what you're actually doing, to the point where it's like I couldn't see myself doing anything different.
Right.
And it's around that time where, like, it was just like me with a bunch of people that I jived with who were also amazing players. I was probably the worst player in the room compared to all those guys. Like, they were all, like, and I'm not to talk in but in terms of, like, even in the institutional level, like, they were all, like, first or second chair in All-State for their instruments, which is pretty impressive in Arizona. Arizona's, like, a pretty good musical state in terms of, like, competition and stuff. And so they were all, like, first, second chair in state. I didn't really have a
But
place
let me ask you a question. I think part of it is, like, that's cool. I mean, don't get me wrong. You need to have some kind of understanding of where you fit in, I guess. But the reality is that one thing that I've known about Eternal Wheelus and these other cats is that, like, it's not, like, that's not something that they even necessarily care about. It's not about the awards or the first or second chair. Mm-hmm. It's about, like, what do you have a story to tell? I mean, that to me is the most, and that leads into what because I just reached out to Wheelus and I was like, have you ever played with Braydon? He's like, dude, he produced Space Traveler Union record.
Yeah, that's mainly what I'm doing nowadays,
So exactly, and so what I wanted, switching into putting your producer hat on, engineering hat on.
Yeah.
One thing, and you can push back on me because there's just so much technology now, and it is sometimes it gives people the incentive to just milk all the soul out of the music because they're trying to get it perfect.
Agree.
What's your philosophy on? Because I mean, my favorite, as you can see, we're covered in records here.
No, it's amazing. I love it.
Just all these records, and there's a tribute to Bird with Roy Haynes on there. Rest in peace. It's just Smoking from '71. It's like, dude, these guys are just like, the knowledge is so embedded that they are just playing. It's probably the first take. And the thing I wanted to ask you about is this. I'm not sure, and you can relate it to Space Travelers, because they're playing really urgent, spiritual, over-the-edge music.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about records, especially from this time period of this, before 76, when there was, like, this efficiency model of how you make a record. Before that, there was really just, like, you figured it out.
Yeah,
on the fly. And you were looking for a sound, you made it up with a cardboard box. I mean, it doesn't matter what genre. So, but the thing that I love about recordings, and I don't care what genre from the 60s and 70s, is the idea that there was something called good leakage. There was something called room sound. That not the entire drum kit was not mic'd. It was you were getting this leakage with this room sound that what people don't realize, and this from a live experience, when the spirit starts to move in the room, that's a whole other component to the recording session.
Yeah.
As opposed to just this incessant need to mic everything.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to talk about how you approach not a pop record in LA, but Space Travelers. I mean, for instance, on Kenji's Kid, I mean, How many mics did you use?
I'll be honest, I use a lot, because I take
Explain. So push back on me, because when I listen to modern recorded music, there's a sterility to it.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm somewhere from the Glyn Johns.
Yep.
Let's drop one right. That's it.
The 3 mic method.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, nothing. I've used it before, and I like it. It's cool.
Why would you talk a little bit about your point of view as it relates to recording Space Travelers?
I think when it comes to Space Travelers, it's like a because I agree 100% with what you said as far as like the room goes, and that's why
you don't have to agree with me either.
No, for sure.
I'm in my own bag.
You know your own, your history. You know the man. Glyn Johns. Shout out to the legend. And he's like the guy who pioneered the.
But just also the records are some of the more obscure ones too. They breathe, man.
Yeah.
They just, and again, they were also like, I'm thinking of one in particular with like when Bernie Ledden left the Eagles, he got together with a buddy, Michael Georgiadis, and they recorded. I guess Bernie had just bought Neil Young's house, and so there was this posh recording studio. So you had a nice room sound to begin with, but then it was just, I don't know, man. Like somehow my ears just are so ingrained. I just hear more when there are less mics. So talk a little bit about your approach, because sometimes that music can be very busy. Yeah. Sometimes it can be very cerebral. There's a lot of dynamics and there's a lot of pulse and tension and release.
Yeah.
So it seems to me like it would be in the wheelhouse of a Glyn Johns model. But talk about why you did what you did.
When it comes to the mixing, it kind of does model more of a Glyn Johns sort of thing. Like when on that first record with Space Travelers, most of the drum sounds are the overhead mics.
They are.
The snare mic isn't really in
so
there
the
at
mixing,
all.
the mixing.
Mm-hmm. I am over mic, especially when it comes to East West, and when you're in a studio like that, and you only have a set amount of time, there's a lot of more of like, let's play it safe on the front end, and then get creative on the back end. You know what I mean? Where it's like you only have like time and money are legit. Those are real things you have to consider when you're talking about productions of like records, especially of that level where everything's done at the same time. It's all live recorded,
right?
And you just don't like money, time, it's all a thing, So when it comes to the over micing on this stuff, it's like, that's more of just a way for me to cover my own ass, It's like a way for me to be like, okay, like, I know I want these sounds, and I know that if I wanted to achieve, like you said, like the modern clean method, the way to do that, like you said, is kill the room. You kill the room, take out the room noise, like room mic's done.
Wow, I'm loving Braydon Stark right now. Yeah. So the modern kill the room sound, you're going to kill my soul, but that's what you have to do. But but in this case,
we're talking like fusion jazz, like modern fusion, like modern contemporary jazz. Like when you turn on like Watercolors on Sirius XM, like that's what comes on. It's like that, and I respect it. It's a craft in and of itself. To achieve music that is that like fucking clean. Like it's crazy. And the way you get that is just close mic the hell out of everything. And also if they're gonna do it live like we did, they would have like ultimate isolation. Like they wouldn't like for us. I did my best to isolate the sounds, because it'd be silly to like just say fuck it and let the drums bleed, But
no,
like Ryan was or Eternal Wheelist was in the same room as the drummer,
Thank God. I hope Kenji wasn't in a drum booth, was he?
No.
Good. I mean, because that's the other. But I want to go back to the mixing part. This is really important.
Sure. Yep.
So you did a lot of just for money and time because you did not want to have to go back in.
No way.
Right?
Yeah, it wasn't even an option because they're traveling out from Tucson, the whole thing.
I dig.
Yeah.
I dig. No, it's like you get a whole, you go out to the ocean and you get all this tuna, and you take it in the net, and you take it all, and then you come back and you figure out what is what are the headiest pieces.
That's a good way to put it. 100%.
So with Kenji's drum kit, when you got the original mix, then you started to, I forget the word you used, but fade certain things in and out that you like. Can you talk about what you kept?
Yeah. Like I said, I mainly relied on the overheads for that. The rooms are semi in there because I don't know, for some reason in that room it's Studio 2 East West, and
legendary studio, by the way.
Phenomenal. And we can talk about more of that if you want.
Sure.
The room there for some for some reason, when you use the overheads, especially if you're gonna do a high overheads,
right,
it's almost like a room mic in and of its. It's just like you almost don't need the rooms as much. You keep them in there because it still adds that extra stuff going on, and it honestly just provides a nice surround sounds. It doesn't sound empty. There's never a point where it's empty. It's always full. The room mics are always going. And they're always there. And so when it comes to the mixing, it's like overheads mainly, you know, and then obviously kick. Like I try not to have the kick drum in anything. Like the kick drum is nice. It's nice having the percussive part of it in the overheads a little bit, but ultimately, like when I'm talking overheads in rooms, like I'm rolling off up to like, you know, probably 200 hertz. You know, like where like sometimes with the overheads I'll go less to get the, you know, a little bit more low on the toms. You know, but ultimately it's just like.
I mean, you'll mic the bass drums to get that.
100%.
Yeah, right.
I'll do a 3 mic for that. You know,
Right,
that's
right.
Also, when you're at East West and you
That's
have
very Glenn Johns-ish right there.
yeah, sort of. 3 mics just on the kick.
Oh, 3 mics on the kick. No, yeah, okay. I dig.
That's like anti-glitch.
Yeah, that's so when you first heard the mix, that's probably part of your. Would you say part of your genius in that sense? Because this is a certain kind of music that these guys want to do first take, second take.
Yeah.
They want to do it live with there's no, I mean, minimal overdubbing or just
No overdubbing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is such a refreshing concept.
It's cool.
And
It's cool.
and then you're able to sort of go back. Can you just talk about when you first heard that original mix, what was, and also to catch the vibe of what they're trying to get at. What did you first, if you remember, what did you hear? You said, I got to get that out. I want to bring this more. Do you remember specifically?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. This was not that long, but it was last year.
You've done a lot of work since then.
Yeah, definitely. And we finished the mixing this year in February and March. We finished the record. So I'm trying to think, like, ultimately, like, for the most part, it was just like, I guess it just.
They did not want. Here's my point.
Yeah.
Did it sound, because you did have a huge propensity of mics.
Yes.
Did it sound? Did it sound like? Was there any room sound, or did you have to? Can you create that based on your post production?
No, you got to capture it in the moment.
Okay.
You know? And then so like mainly like the room sounds you get from that recording of that album is like a lot of what you're hearing is the room mics in the room, which are mainly picking up drums. Like I said, Ryan's is right there next to them, but he's blocked off in a booth. So they're really only capturing the drums. And then I had like another ISO booth with all the amps in it, and then the 3 string, the 3 axes, like bass and 2 guitars right there next to the drums, but you couldn't hear them. And then drums, and then flute was in the other ISO booth, so like the room sound you're hearing is mostly the mics of the drums, and then the East-West chamber reverb. They have their own chambers there. They actually have like a room that's super echoey, and they have 2 SM57s in there with a speaker in there. And it plays the sound out through the speaker into this chamber, and then it mics it up.
It's like fantasy back in the early 70s, yeah.
It's sick. And so that's also a lot of what you're hearing. I sent pretty much everything to that, like mostly flute and sax to the chambers with a little bit of guitar, no bass, and then I maybe sent a little bit of drums to it. But the drums, I was mainly using the plate. They also have these EMT 140 plates there, which are beautiful. Like the actual big ones where you have to crank the knob on it to like change the decay time. But the chamber reverb also really, really, really helps like just cement this like, just like an omnipresent, sound,
Yeah, well, the ultimate thing is like when it's live, you want to try to capture that living, breathing organism.
Yeah.
Do you, I mean, you're everyone, you put your ego into it as much as you want.
Sure.
We talked about, when you first showed up, and I was like, dude, you kind of just fell into a pot of gold, in LA, and you were talking about the statistics of the graduates from your school. Yeah. I guess the first question is, why? It's a 2-part question. Why are these jobs at such a premium? And number 2, what do you believe is your true nature or the genius of what you bring to a session? Doesn't matter what it is. That makes you hireable and employable in a city that used to be, I mean, the studio scene used to be absolutely insane. I mean, there was plenty of work to go around. It wasn't a huge fraternity, but it certainly wasn't like today. And part of it was that, you had unlimited studio time, you had record company, there were huge budgets. It wasn't like you were in this kind of time rush or, how to get this stuff done. Cause like you said, time is money. I mean, cats could go in and record at all times of night. And there were several different studios all over LA. And I've interviewed like Bruce Botnick and those guys, and just legendary cats.
Amazing.
But why? So why do you think the job is it just a supply and demand issue? And then furthermore, why do you believe that you have been so successful in getting being able to sing for yourself in LA as an engineer?
Yeah, I'll start with the job thing. It's whenever it comes to job industry stuff, it's always supply and demand, And then, but the why is where it gets interesting, where it's like 100%. There's a lot more people looking for jobs in music than there are jobs in music, And I think a part of it is a lot to do with just the way, like you said, like things are vastly different from when they were back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. When like the studio time was on not just valuable but a necessity, like because nowadays, like recording wise, there's just not a lot of money to go around because like
it's insane.
It's easy. Well, it's easy to
well,
record
that's
your
the
own
problem
stuff,
is that it doesn't make it good, but yes, you're right. It's the proliferation of being able to have your own home studio, whatever, that kind of stuff.
It's a lot easier nowadays. I mean, you got 10 grand and you can make yourself a record that sounds just as good as anything else, especially, so it depends on the genre too, but that's a big deal. Is just because the studio has gone from being a thing you have to pay for to being a more consumer thing, which and and there's goods and bads to that. I think ultimately it's a good thing that people are easily able to create, and I do at the end of the day believe that your role as an engineer can always find a place even if home recording is a thing, and it might be tricky. I think the way the job structure looks as an engineer is a lot different. It's not so much. It's really moving away from fill out a resume or like shadow an engineer and then work your way up from changing trash bags to setting up microphones. That still exists. It's just a lot fewer and far between. And East West kind of does model that. Where it's like you show up, you get an entry level gig.
Dude, Dan Healy from The Dead. I've interviewed him 5 times. The guy was cleaning shitters at wherever he was when he first at Mercury in San Francisco. So that was there is this sort of higher. You work your way up.
Yeah.
But in general, when you've been called, I mean, you worked on Jennifer Lopez sessions.
Yeah, I did. So I did her last album.
So I mean, in that sense, I want to believe that it was done in a Space Traveler's context, but I guarantee it was probably just layering and maybe
it was a little bit of both. I feel like that's the thing is like when you like live still has a vibe to it you can't make up. So like a lot of the stuff I did on her album was mostly the orchestral recording. So I didn't do her vocals per se, but I did a lot of the live band stuff and a lot of the live orchestra stuff. And yes, they would overdub, but it's a lot different in orchestra. But it's really interesting. Like you have, on a Pro Tools session, you'll usually have how many tracks for how many mics, In orchestra, you'll have up to 60 tracks, 60 microphones, for these giant, these giant, band, these orchestras and stuff. And so when you're overdubbing on that, it gets a lot more, it's interesting. It's honestly like easy and hard at the same time because then you're overdubbing like all 60 tracks at once. All the mics because you can't lose the room and then like if it's just violins you'll have to go in there and just do the violins. You're always recording the room. I don't know, it's really interesting how it all works. But most of what I did for her was actually more of a live thing because it was live instruments. I feel like the main thing when it comes to like what differentiates an album from like being truly live to not so live is like A, how much bleed you have, but B, how many instruments are bleeding with each other. If the minute you're doing vocals in the same room with something, that's like really live, and then
very live.
Or even like in Space Travelers like you can call live recording like live just means that everyone's recording at once. That's all it boils down to. And then like and then the energy can go up and down from there in terms of like bleed or like how the people are playing, yada yada. So like even modern records, pop records too, they'll still do their best to incorporate that live feel because it ultimately has the most soul in it, and like even people at the top, like they know that, and just because their music sounds clean does not mean
some of those cats are the baddest musicians, but they're trying to commodify it. They're trying 100%. Trying to make it more accessible to the mainstream
100%.
listener.
Yeah.
Do people like in your mind? I mean, I'm 46 and I came to music later in life, and I started through records and. More recently, it's been like, the live context as well. But why do you feel that that clean sound is so appealing to modern listeners' ears?
That's a really good question. And I
Because
think
there's
now we're-
nothing more. To me, the stuff that I lose my mind with listening to is the stuff you're talking about. It's not. It is. There is this quality of just this. I don't want to say good leakage, but just this. There's an unquantifiable mystical quality to having this room sound.
Yeah, I mean, I refer to like the stuff you're trying to say, like the modern stuff. I just call it overproduction. You know, I think overproduction is like very much like
Or
vast,
over post production.
or over post production.
Because that was the thing when I like the Brown album by the band, okay, Levon Helm and those cats. Everything was that was the thing. Everything was pre-production.
Yeah.
And they talked about the concepts, and they talked, and again, they talked about what they wanted out of these tunes, and then they went in and freaking, set it up and burned it through.
Yep.
And there was barely any post production. Now it's flipped on its head.
I think it depends on the genre. I think it's really interesting genre specific because like nowadays like jazz and indie records are still heavily pre-production focused. They're still heavily live focused. They're not always live, but they're always pre-production focused. Usually like nowadays, like especially in indie rock scenes, bands will have like 3 different demos they recorded 3 different times. Like one was done on Logic with instruments, and then one was done live, and then one was done, somewhere. And then they're like, okay, finally, now that I have like my 3rd demo, and this is where I really want it, now we'll record it professionally. I see that a lot, and that's really cool to see, and it's inspiring. I think the level of pre-production that like I wish I could tap more into is like, back in the day, like spending like I've seen sessions. Because at East West, it's nice when you're working there, you get to see like all walks of sessions, all different genres, all different expertise levels. And there's people that will literally set their drum kit and spend like the first day the band won't even show up. They'll just bring the drum kit, drop it off, and they'll spend an entire day getting drum sounds. They'll just like sit in the booth, like tweaking the EQs. Like I wish I long for a day I can do that. And I've done a little bit of that. Like nowadays I have my own studio in my garage in my house, which is a full band studio, drums, guitar, bass, keys, the whole thing. And that's at my house, which is really nice. So I have been able to get a little bit more, just like really, really giving a shit about like how things sound before I even press record, So that's cool to be able to do with my own space. But the studio would be sick to like actually like sit down with a legitimate kit and do the same thing. And we don't see that a lot nowadays just because it's a money thing, like East West costs, thousands of dollars a day to record there, And that's not including the engineer fee. That's not including any players you got to pay for, or the lunch, or this. And it's just expensive, And naturally, when it's that expensive, only a few. It boils down to 2 categories: people that can afford it and people that need it, or can afford it without having to think about it.
My God, I mean, it's great. It's such an amazing thing because there's so much cost up front, and with not really any kind of commerce-based record industry, how do you ever recoup that money? And that's especially when you're making I don't want to say a vanity project, but you're doing something that is out. That's just not. Like how do you know, like where do you feel your greatest strengths in the studio are? I mean, to me, could someone come to Braydon and be like, dude, we need this done in 2 hours?
Sure.
And you're able to get what they want to hear quickly? Is it being able to push cats out of their comfort zone and getting them to what you want to hear? I mean, what is your true nature?
Like what separates me from the rest?
Yeah. Why are you hitting it right now?
Yeah. We'll go back to that second question that you asked earlier, where it's like, what allows me to succeed and not others.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And like, I mean, I think a big part of it is yes, like I do really try to like know the artist is asking for and deliver it like appropriately. I feel like a lot of times like. I feel like younger engineers are of the same boat, where it's like they like the artist is like kind of the boss, and like there was a time where the engineer, like there's a once you're in the out there like working on sessions and stuff, you'll quickly realize that there's like the old man engineer stereotype where it's like grumpy, he knows what's best, don't fuck with him, yada yada,
Right.
And that was a legitimate thing, but that was back in the day when you were actually like when you had to edit music, you had to cut slices of tape and like tape together and like like it was a different time where like and you actually had to like know how to like tune a tape machine and set it all up. It was a much different where like back then it makes sense that people like you have to like you might as well have a degree for that kind of stuff because it's a lot different nowadays. it's I don't know, it's weird. I would say like nowadays you have to know just as much, just in different aspects. You know, it's less about like knowing the absolute hell out of like how to work a tape machine and like get premium sounds. But nowadays, being a truly good engineer, you should know about like you know, like mixing, and you should know about mixing and recording and mastering. You should know about, you know, just like, you know, and then I'm also valuable because I think I've spent a lot of time trying to learn the music business side of things too, where like I think like the more like you can teach artists, like when artists work with me or when someone works with me, I do my best to like, you know, just explain to them things, you know, and like tell them like my side of the story if they have questions, you know, in terms of like what they should focus on, or like, you know, like the marketability of certain things and yada yada. I don't know. So like, but I also just, you know, I enjoy like a big part of it, and I hate to say it, is just like personality. You know, like personality is a huge fucking thing when it comes to recording and music, especially. You know, it's like because as far as skill goes, there's a lot of people out there that are skillful, but not as many that
Again, it's the flag vibe. It's the flag
so, yeah, you can say
vibe,
that.
dude. Because I'm telling you, man, dude, what I've learned too, like, is that, you know, with cats that want to go on, you know, and be in bands, I mean, they're more apt. I mean, there's so many great cats out there, but they're more apt to pick not the best musicians, good musicians, but good hangs.
Yeah.
More importantly, a good, comfortable vibe. Yeah. Because, like you said, there's people that have chops for days, but they're impossible to work with.
Yeah, and like, and I hate to say it, but like, I don't know, it's unfortunate, but like,
it's just the truth.
Yeah, it is, you know, and that even like, you know, like people, you know, it's just different. I feel like even if you're socially awkward, as long as you're a cool person or like, you know, nice, like it'll work out, you know.
Right. When it's my way or the highway, or it, you know, you just you know you're, you know, it. So just people are like, you know, Braydon's got chops and he's just a good guy.
Yeah, and it's just a fine line between like being a cool guy but not overstepping your boundaries. You know, it's like I know people that are cool people but are, you know, just talkers, and like when you're in the studio, like I've said, time is money. Like, you know, you have to find a perfect balance. Like,
that's not easy to do.
Yeah, it's a perfect balance between like being cool but not being so cool that you're distracting from the ultimate purpose, which is, you know, like,
that's Jake Feinberg. Luckily, no, actually, you know, like I'm not. That's why I'm never in the studio. But the thing is, you know, before I let you go, because we've been burnt. I mean, we're already cooking for 40 minutes here.
I got time. You know, whenever.
No, it's great. We're gonna do set 2 down the road. But I just wanted to ask you, where you sit today, being grateful for what you have. Where do you still feel like you need to push yourself the most in order to grow, either as a person or as a professional?
I think what I'm working on right now is I feel like I've learned. My main thing right now is mixing, recording. Not to say I've got it down pat, but I spent 3 years in the studio doing it with like professional, like the best of the best. You know, so like not to say I have it down to a science, but like, I'm pretty good at recording. You know, I don't feel like I need to spend so much time like figuring out how to get a good drum sound no more. I mean, you're always learning, of course, but my main thing right now is mixing. Mixing is like my journey at the moment, is figuring out how to like mix things to perfection, you know. But that being said, it's like
there's that word again though.
Perfection.
Imperfection is in my book. That's what,
that's the perfection is. And that's what I was just gonna say is like recently, like now that I've like tried to get these perfection, like now I'm cracking the code of like how to mix it and like soulfully, you know, like how to like get it to connect with people. You know, like when you listen to a lot of like records, you know, like they're kind of like, some of them have shitty mixes, you know, some of them are like, you know, like the vocals aren't tuned, the vocals aren't reverbed, you know, it's like a really raw vocal. Like I was listening on the way here, like I've been like a big like folk, like kind of indie rock folk era.
Sure.
There's this band Current Joys, and I was listening to some of their music on the way over here, and it's like their vocal is literally dry. It's just a dry vocal over like a guitar riff.
In that folk vibe though, right?
But it's sick.
Yeah,
and
it's sick.
And it's so well done. So I've been focusing on that lately, where I'm like, you know, same with Space Brothers Union, kind of like that. You know, to go back to that, it's like, even though I mic the drum kit up with the ability to get it that clean sound, it's like I'm learning and actively like teaching myself how to go away from that and mix more to like what you feel, you know. And that's like really hard, because you have to know how to make it sound perfect to get there, because like I don't know, you just have, it's like, it's different, it's weird, you know. And
no, something just popped into my head.
Yeah.
This is really important, and easier said than done, because there was just so much work back in the day and nobody really had. Everyone was busy. They had 6. If you were in the studio scene in New York, you were going to 6 or 7 sessions a day. You couldn't romanticize or, just, go over something over and over and over again. People, and so
Yeah.
David Spinoza, I don't know if you know him. Great studio guitar player, producer in his own right. He was in Atlantic Studios. He was headed out to a jingle, and Arif Mardin and Dr. John, happy birthday, Dr. John, 2 days ago. They were doing his album Right Place, Wrong Time. You know that tune, Right Place, Wrong. It's a legendary tune. And they wanted to have a guitar solo on it. So they said, hey, David, come in here. And so he got his amp, tuned up his guitar, played through, it was an overdub, played through it. And right away when he stopped, he's like, oh, I overbent that. I hit a clam. I want to do it again. They're like, no, that's perfect. That's just perfect. You're done. So he went off to his session, didn't think anything of it, didn't really even know what the tune was.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he heard it on the radio, and it was becoming really popular.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he gets in a cab one day with his 6 guitars and, ran. The taxi cab guy's like, hey, man, he's like, this is my new favorite tune. Check it out. And he puts on it, and David's like, hey, man, he's like, that's me on guitar. He's like, you're full of shit. But the point is that they kept the clam.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now he had to go to another gig. He wasn't going to sit there and be adamant about doing it over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what about is it still in my fantasy that Braydon Stark could go to somebody and say, okay, that's not exactly how that's not exactly how it was. Maybe you overbent that, but the feel is what counts. The feel that feels good.
Yeah.
We should keep that one, even though it's not perfect. Louis Shelton, great, unreal. Before Larry Carlton in the studios, hit a clam on Last Train to Clarksville with the Monkees. That's in the song. Like you said, Isaac Hayes, a mic fell off the amp. The Bee Gees bought a $75,000 board trying to find that sound. And then when they were hanging out one day backstage, Ike was like, dude, that was a mic that fell off the...
No way.
And there's some epics. Yeah, I mean, a lot of... And I just... Again, part of me is such a spontaneous, creative person. Have you had an opportunity to say, even though you're not an elder...
Yeah.
To be like, hey, you know what? It's not perfect, but actually it feels perfect. Let's keep this track.
I have. And a lot of that comes from like vocals, like some people, like, because vocals are like, when it comes to artists and recording vocals, they can be very particular,
Sure.
But
they got to listen to it too,
Yeah. And there's times where I'm like, look, bro, like that's not perfect, but we're going to keep it. Because like the vibe's there. Like you said, it has happened, a couple times.
And so how, because that to me is where the rubber meets the road.
They usually take my word for it.
I love it. I freaking love that, man. Because but going back to, mixing, this is important.
Yeah.
Talk about what it is in the mixing process that where you want to grow. I
would say like aside from making it like just a fluent like vibe, and like that word is very, it can go wherever, but like ultimately just like, when you listen to a song, I want someone to be able to listen to it and be like, just a song that people would put on a playlist and like listen to again and again. That's my goal right now. It's like just get to a point like where it's like my mixes are just exactly what the artist envisioned and the people enjoy. There's a line. There's a line between what the artist wants and what I want that you have to find the balance of. And then like right now I'm just working on like getting to a point where you can put a song of mine on in the car and it will also play to the next one.
It'll have the Stark stamp on it.
It'll have the Stark stamp, and also, and then you can skip to the next tune, and you'll be like, yeah, these songs are both great, Like,
right?
I would love that to be a thing. And like,
I love that.
I'm not saying, I don't know, maybe my...
No, but that's where you want to get to, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe I am there, maybe I'm not. I'm just like, there are a few songs of mine that I've mixed where I'm like, yeah, that's... All right,
let's just throw those out right now for people that are going to see this.
My favorite mixes that I've done, and you'll appreciate this, the Bush League EP, some of my favorite work. I love not all the songs, but a lot of them. Oh my god, dude! Like their song "Drift" is my favorite, one of my favorites I've ever.
Dude, they have saved me, dude.
They're good, and I love the cast. They're sick.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, so that's one of them. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then my favorite mixes are yet to come out. It's the next edition of the Space Travelers Union stuff.
Okay, so that's on the horizon.
I can't talk about it, but yeah.
Absolutely not. That's fine. I mean, I think...
It's so good.
Before, I'm just going to... I need free association. 1 or 2 words.
Yeah.
on these cats because they have brought so much joy to me. Obviously, Eternal Wheelers, but Dylan Walker, Free Association.
So I didn't meet him really until I worked on his music. He hit me up after I worked with Space Travelers, and he was like, "Hey, we want you to mix our EP."
Oh, this is unbelievable.
And I was like, "Sick." I know Kenyon and Liam. Kenyon was in, I grew up with him at high school,
Badass,
Liam,
dude.
Yeah,
I mean, dude, I think my favorite. Dude.
He's sick. He's sick. And then I met Liam through Ryan, just hanging out with them, like kicking it. And then,
oh man.
And then Carson, I went to middle school with Carson, so I've known Carson.
Yo, he is a monster drummer.
He's good. So I've known Carson and Eternal Wheelers about the same amount of time. And then Jack Ells I knew him mutually through mutual friends, but we never really kicked it until again after I was on the music.
My hero, man. That dude is so chill, man.
And I love, when that happens, when it's like there's people that I like want to connect with, but just time happens or things happen. But then you're able to, like, when the work comes around, it's like naturally I'm just like sitting there talking with the guys, texting them, and we're just spending more time together. Like they came out to LA, we all hung out there for a bit. And it's just fun, like a lot of friendships are born through music, and they're all really cool dudes, and I've been stoked to like, and it's cool to see them taking it seriously. They're good. Like they're not just
dude,
cool.
they're freaking
they're good.
Exactly.
And like the fact, and not to say like, oh, if someone pays me, they're serious about their music, but like in the end of the day, it's like if someone's willing to, go out of their way to find someone who can make their music like, socially acceptable to an extent, and they're willing to pay out of pocket for that. It's like, it's cool to see, it's mad impressive. And it's like, okay, you actually are attempting to make this project bigger than just, a fun time with the boys, which it is at the end of the day. You can't forget that it's a fun time with the boys, but
Well, you want to have fun, but at the same time, it's original music. There's some really good hooks. It's
well done.
It's solid.
It's well done.
I
love the tunes.
And it's like these guys are top shelf musicians. I mean, they're not that. Before I let you go, the one, and I will say this. I mean, I've been raving about Flag, but the spirit who connected me with everybody was Haven Walker. Does that name ring a bell?
No, I don't.
Well, that's Dylan's dad, and they have a music scholarship now. Now, he was a pretty titanic musician in Flag.
Wicked.
Kimmock, he played with Kimmock and now they have a music scholarship. But he tragically passed like when he was like 46, 47 years old. And since the minute that I connected with those cats, I could just feel his presence. And really more to the point of saying, hey, yes, we are all interconnected. Yes, there is a homogenization of sound on an instrumental jazz level. It's hard to tell who people are now as opposed to back in the day.
Yeah.
That all being said, there are still so many freaking diamonds.
Yeah.
Especially I wasn't getting it in Phoenix, and there's some beautiful cats out there, and I have to shed more and keep digging there. But
Tucson's interesting.
Tucson is that's a whole other ball of wax.
Yeah.
But really at the core, Tucson there's a bunch of graybeard elders who are just badasses who are also burned out just because it's a desert rock town.
Sure.
But then it's just such an honor to have that Flag collect that commune they have over there that you're heading over to. I mean, it's just such a beautiful enclave, and I just know that in my searchings, Haven put me on this path, and I feel
that's amazing. Yeah,
completely indebted to it, Braydon. And I'm flying out. I don't know when you're going to be back in LA, but I'm going to be up in Ojai. We gotta layer on this and do another chat.
Out.
Maybe do it in the studio. But man,
that'd be cool.
Keep kicking ass, dude. And thank you for staying on the righteous path. And you're working with all the right cats. So straight ahead, brother.
I appreciate you, brother. And if anyone wants to reach out to me, you know where to find me. Braydon Stark on Instagram.
Braydon Stark, man. Much love to you, man. Have a ball. Happy Thanksgiving.
It was a pleasure.
We'll do it again,
seriously.
man.
Yeah, we will. You will. But have a good one, brother.
It's the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll see you later.